Most sleep advice focuses on the obvious, things like cutting caffeine or dimming your screens or buying a better mattress, and while all of those things aren't necessarily wrong, they are incomplete. And today, I'm covering 3 lesser-known research-supported protocols that target sleep at a deeper level. First, a low or no-cost behavioral method from Northern Europe that works by manipulating your core body temperature. Second is a specific chrononutrition protocol involving a fruit that you probably already have in your kitchen, and it's been shown to reduce your sleep latency by 35% in clinical trials. And third is the one that most people have the most questions about, a cognitive technique that shuts off your analytical mind in under 5 minutes with no medication required. So welcome back. I am John Watkins, and this channel is dedicated to evidence-based approaches to natural wellness, specifically like how to align your modern habits with the biology that we all have built into us. And funnily enough, sleep is one of the most researched and most misunderstood areas of human health, and the dominant conversation pretty much stops at hygiene. But the science has moved well past that, and what researchers are now focused on is what I call sleep engineering, deliberately manipulating your thermal environment, your neurochemistry, and your cognitive state to make sleep more reliable and more restorative. I'll be drawing from several studies that will all be linked in the description below if you want to read those for yourself. So let's start with hack number 1, and if you share a bed with someone, pay close attention because you may have been unknowingly sabotaging each other's sleep. So here's something that most couples don't know they're doing wrong. Sleeping under a shared duvet is actually working against your sleep quality. To enter what they call the stage 3 slow wave sleep, the deep physically restorative phase, your core body temperature needs to drop by approximately 1 to 3 degrees Celsius. And for most people who are watching in America, that's like 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit to 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That drop is the primary signal your pineal gland uses to ramp up your melatonin production. And when 2 people share a single large duvet or blanket, they create what researchers call a thermal recirculation loop. Basically, your partner's body heat raises the ambient temperature under the covers, and you try to vent the heat by kicking your leg out, and then they pull the blanket back, and your core temperature stays elevated, and your brain is pretty much locked out of its deepest recovery phases, even if you're technically asleep. The fix is called the Scandinavian sleep method, and it costs basically nothing if you have a good pair of scissors. You and your partner each use your own separate twin duvet instead of sharing one. So the first magical piece to this is what we call thermal decoupling. So each person controls their own little microclimate without affecting the other. Second is what they call easier distal vasodilation. So your body vents excess heat primarily through your hands and your feet. And if you have your own duvet, it lets you expose your extremities to cooler air without waking up your partner. And naturally, that exposure triggers the core temperature drop your brain is waiting for. The research is pretty much very clear. The rate of core cooling is one of the strongest predictors of sleep onset speed. So if you're not cooling, you're not dropping into deep sleep. Now, hack number 2 is where things get more interesting because the next protocol works on a neurochemical level. And most people have no idea this fruit is capable of doing what it does to your brain chemistry at night. But before we get into the fruit, a quick word on something I think pairs well with everything that we're discussing today. I actually run a small company called Ron's Balms and Botanicals, and so one product that is very relevant to this conversation is our nighttime CBD CBN gummies. Now, most people are familiar with CBD, but CBN or cannabinol is the component I find more interesting for sleep specifically. It has well-documented sedative properties, and we formulated these gummies as a natural non-habit forming option for people who want help transitioning into sleep And obviously, these gummies work particularly well alongside the protocols that I'm discussing, especially if your nervous system tends to stay elevated even when you're doing everything else right. One thing that's worth noting is that we ship nationwide, and new customers, like potentially you, can save 25% on your entire first order by signing up to our newsletter. The link is going to be down in the description and in the pinned comment. Okay, let's get to that fruit. So you've probably seen food-based sleep remedies on social media, things like lettuce water and banana tea and warm milk, and most of those lack meaningful clinical support. But the kiwi fruit protocol is totally different. A peer-reviewed study on sleep neurochemistry found that consuming 2 green kiwi fruits roughly 60 to 90 minutes before bed produced measurable improvements in your sleep architecture. So pretty much, participants fell asleep 35% faster and increased their total sleep time by over 13%. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Kiwi fruit contains serotonin and its precursor tryptophan, but the real driver is an enzyme called actinidin. Actinidin is a protease, and it aids in protein digestion. By improving the breakdown of dietary proteins before bed, it increases the bioavailability of tryptophan in your gut. So your brain converts that tryptophan into serotonin and finally into melatonin. So you're essentially giving your body better raw materials to produce its own sleep-inducing hormones, and then that way obviously you don't have to take a bunch of pills of melatonin because those are bad for you. One practical note is to only use the green ones, not the gold ones. The green kiwi fruit has the significantly higher actinidin concentration, which is what drives the effect. And now we're going to get into hack number 3, which is one that most people tell me changes everything for them. It's designed specifically for overactive minds, and if you've laid in bed replaying conversations or mentally running through tomorrow's to-do list, what I'm about to share with you is going to make a lot of sense. So the third protocol targets the main reason analytical people can't sleep, and it's not their body, but it's more like in your mind, right? Your brain has what researchers call a sleep onset control system, or SOCS. Essentially, a background process that monitors for threats and unresolved problems before it allows you to, lose consciousness and go to sleep. Analytical or emotionally charged thinking keeps the system active, which delays sleep onset regardless of how physically tired you are. The technique to bypass this system is called cognitive shuffling or serial diverse imaging. The goal is to present your brain with a stream of random, unrelated, non-threatening imagery, and this mimics the hypnagogic state or the mental pattern that your brain naturally produces as it's already falling asleep, which signals the control system that it's safe for you to disengage and fall fully asleep. So I know that was a lot, but here's basically how you do it. You're going to choose a neutral seed word like basket. Take the first letter, B, and visualize a bear, and then visualize a ball, and then a bell, and spend 5 to 10 seconds visualizing each image, making it as vivid as you can. Then, once you've exhausted all the B words you can think of, move to A. So that's stuff like apple, and ant, and axe, and then S. And most people don't reach the third letter before they're asleep. You're replacing the structured analytical thoughts with a kind of loose associative imagery the brain expects during the natural transition to sleep, and your cognitive gatekeeper that, is like all of your thoughts that keep you awake, they stand down because you're too busy thinking about, weird balls and bats and apples and bacon and things of that nature. So when you combine all three, that's the Scandinavian sleep method to fix your, thermal environment, and you get some kiwi fruit in you to optimize your neurochemistry, and then you use the cognitive shuffling to quiet your racing mind, you're not relying on willpower anymore. You're creating conditions where sleep becomes a path of least resistance. Now, before you go, I want to point you to something that ties directly into everything that we've just covered here. And if the CBN gummies that I mentioned earlier caught your attention, I did a full dedicated video on exactly how CBN works for sleep and the science behind it and how it compares to melatonin and why more people are making the switch. And it's called The Truth About CBN for Sleep, and it's right here. Please do me a huge favor, hit the like button and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of our upcoming stuff. We cover these kinds of things every week, and it genuinely helps this channel if you want to follow us and help us grow. Also, don't forget to sign up to the newsletter if you want to save 25% on your first order, and hopefully we see you guys in that next one. Goodbye.